Inside this weeping myrtle lives a queen. She rests in a dark cavern. Meanwhile, her workers are busy. I stand and marvel, watching them work, drinking in the soft scent of honey. And I find myself wondering, is Pooh Bear just around the corner? I'm sure that Winnie would love the taste of weeping myrtle honey. And as I discover from my neighbours, the weeping myrtle is a favourite of the bees. Which brings me to ask you, Wonder Weavers, what is your favourite sweet or type of honey? I would love you to share with us in the description box below. So this week I made my first mini bed for the bedroom of the dollhouse, and I had a lot of fun upcycling things, so making bed linen again from an old cami which I dyed, and the remnants of a t-shirt that I'd already cut up. And at the end of the process of making the bed, I found myself marveling at how magical the process of renovating the doll house has been. I am noticing changes in my art practice. I think I'm gaining more confidence. The more I experiment, the more I'm finding my voice. But I think the magic is trickling into my everyday life, and I'm finding myself baking and doing other things like this that I wouldn't usually do. I'm curious, Wonder Weavers, have you noticed this too? That the more you work on your miniatures and your doll houses, you're noticing how that magic is sprinkled everywhere. I'd love you to share in the description box below. As a result of noticing the little transformations that are taking place in my world, I've been thinking a lot about the nature of creativity, and I think the late Maya Angelou was spot on when she said, you can never use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have. And I'm really grateful for her wisdom. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But I am also, I'm just in awe. So I hope you enjoy this week's vlog, Wonder Weavers. As always, I love reading your stories. I love connecting with you. So please share with me. I'd love to hear from you in the description box below. Over quite a few cups of tea this week, I've been pondering what kind of bed to make. In the end, I decided to keep things simple and make a mini double bed inspired by those of the Victorian era. So when I say inspired, I don't mean I intend to make a replica. Simply that after looking at Victorian style beds, I'm going to make the headrail slightly more ornate and curvilinear. So after doing a quick inventory, looking at the materials I have, I've decided to make the bed using craft sticks, which I will use as the slates for the bed. For the bed's headrail and end rail, I'm going to use wooden panels by Krafter Korner and dowel rods. And for the side rails of the bed, I'm going to use balsa wood lengths. In the end, the materials determine the length and width of the bed. For example, my craft sticks are 11 centimeters long. Once I trim their rounded ends, they end up being 10.5 centimeters. So once I've cut and sanded the pieces, I paint them with acrylic paint. I've added water to the paint for a stain-like appearance. Once dry, I start assembling the bed, gluing dowel rods to the head and end rails. As I do this, I realize that the bed looks a little bit plain. So I decide to carve some wooden appliques. From a wooden panel, I carve out an arch following the contours of the top of the headrail. And from a 1 centimeter thick balsa wood block, I carve a design. It's a very simple design, consisting of a flower with 4 petals. Using the sweeping cut, I carve a circle, and then with my utility knife, I carve 4 lines radiating outwards from the center of the circle. After sanding and painting both pieces or appliques, I glue them to the head of the bed. Once dry, I assemble the rest of the bed. So far so good, Wonder Weavers. Next, I create a mattress. I start by cutting up a cotton cami, following the dimensions of the bed's frame, which is 10 centimeters in length and 10.5 centimeters wide. I double the length and cut the cotton so it's at least 23 centimeters long. This is so I can fold the cotton fabric over and only have to sew along 3 sides. I pin and fold over the sides. Once pinned, I check the length and the width of the fabric, making any final adjustments. And then stitch the sides together with a simple running stitch. I turn the fabric inside out. I then stuff my little bag with filling. In my last vlog, where I made bedding for a cradle, I used wool. This time I'm going to use polyester filling. I've had this filling for a while. I bought it before I learned how to needle felt, and I'm not really in love with it, but I want to use it up. I then pin the final side and sew it up using the closing or lattice stitch. And I'm happy to say that with practice I'm feeling more confident with this stitch. If you remember, last week was the first time I had ever used it. And finally, to help the mattress sit flat, I sew alternate rows of short or buttonhole stitches. Next, I sew a sheet. For this, I'm using a fat quarter that has a really lovely soft blue rose pattern. This piece of fabric will cover the mattress. When cutting it, I keep the bed's dimensions in mind, but I cut a rectangular piece that is slightly larger. And that's because I would like to be able to tuck the ends of the sheet underneath the mattress. I pin all four sides and then sew them with a simple running stitch again. In my material pile, I found leftovers of a quilt that my mum made for my 21st. So I've decided to make my mini quilt using some of the material. It will make the quilt a little bit more special. As some of you know, my mum is no longer with us. For the back of the quilt, I'm going to use a strip of an old t-shirt made of cotton that I've dyed purple. I'm also going to use some lace trim that I thrifted. When pinning the trim, I make sure that it sits inside, so in between the front and the back of the quilt, and that it's actually facing inwards. This is so when I turn the quilt inside out, the lace will face outwards. Once I tie the knot, my hands follow the rhythm of the running stitch once more. Once I've sewn 3 sides, I turn the quilt inside out, and it's looking pretty good. I think my mum would be chuffed. To finish the quilt off, I sew the final side, closing it with the lattice stitch. As a finishing touch, I make 4 pillows for the bed. 2 are made using the same fabric as the quilt and are oversized. For the other 2, which are smaller, I decided to stuff them with dried lavender. I thought it might be nice to add lavender, as it is the plant associated with sleep and serenity. I loved making these so much that I'm actually inspired to make one for me, for my big bed. On a small rectangular piece of cotton, I sew a stylized version of the flower. I cut a small piece of cotton fabric from my old t-shirt, add a small amount of lavender, and a drop of lavender essential oil. I then sew the sides, and there's no need to be neat because this will be tucked inside of the pillow. With 2 rectangular pieces of fabric, which will be the front and back of the pillow, I cover the lavender and then pin the sides and then sew them together with the applique stitch. So now it's time to make the bed. And look who's sleeping on the bed. Why, it's Muffin the cat. Thank you for watching, Wonder Weavers. I hope that you have a relaxing weekend. Take care, stay well, and don't forget to play. Adios. Ciao. Ready for a bedtime story, Muffin?